Всем доброе утро. Это конференция Talents in Games, онлайн-версия. 2 дня мы посвятили тому, чтобы делиться секретами о том, как делать игры. Talents in Games — это образовательная конференция для разработчиков игр, и я надеюсь, что вы уже успели узнать много нового, а сегодня будет еще больше. И готова представлять уже первого спикера. Сейчас я переключусь на английский, потому что это спикер англоязычный, это CEO компании Paintbucket Games. И, hey, Jörg, how are you?
Hey there. Hey, Yulia. I'm good, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. So you're gonna tell us about Beholder 3, right?
Yes, that's the plan.
This is super exciting.
I'm gonna talk about how it is as a small, or I mean even say tiny indie studio, taking on an already successful franchise together with a publisher. And
well, I'm sure it's going to be very useful for our audience. So it's over to you, please.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for watching. Yes, as I said, I'm going to talk a little bit about how it is as an indie studio, which is supposed to be independent, working with an already existing franchise, taking it over, while keeping your independence and using it as a chance that also might contain some risks. So I'm going to introduce us quickly. We are Paintbucket Games. I founded Paintbucket Games in 2018, so 4 years ago, together with Sebastian, who's here on the right. That was the team back then for entire of 2018. We were just 2 people. However, this wasn't our first undertaking in games. Sebastian and myself have been making games for 18 years now. We have been working on bigger studios and bigger projects before that for quite a while. But in 2018, we decided that it's now time to go indie and make our own games. And the first game we worked on is Through the Darkest of Times. It's a game, a very dark game in a historical setting where you, as a civilian resistance group, fight against the Nazi regime in Berlin. And when we shipped this game in January 2020, we were still quite a tiny team of 5 people now. We had hired 3 more. Today, we are a team of 19, and that has to do with Beholder 3 for sure, and with the development of the studio in general. And I'm going to talk about this. We are sitting in Berlin, in the center of Berlin, at a place called the Saftladen, which is what we call an indie game collective. So we are not the only developer there, but we sit there together with other indie game studios in one huge office with many developers, which is very nice. And if we don't sit there and develop serious games and work all the time on them and make games like Through the Darkest of Times, or another game called Septembertal, or the one this talk is about, like Beholder 3. Some of these games actually get nominated for awards. Sometimes we even win them. And then we celebrate, as it is our duty as cool indie game developers. By the way, I want to throw this in. We are currently looking for a producer. If you are out for a job and you think you are ready to get this job, please apply at jobs@paintbucket.de. Thank you. What are the chances and risks that a small indie studio takes and gets when working on an established franchise with a publisher? When Alawar, the publisher of Beholder 3, called us and told us that they would like to work on us with Beholder 3, we actually couldn't believe it in the beginning, because we thought we were way too tiny and not on the radar for everyone. And we thought that they were probably looking for an outsourcing studio because they liked our art or something. But it turned out that they actually wanted to make us the full game. And so we had to think about, could we do this? And what would this mean for us as a at this point still tiny indie game studio. And so we're considering the chances. Well, first of all, of course, this game could make us rich. It could bring us on the landscape. It could make us famous because the Beholder series is already famous. It has thousands of fans on the world, on the entire world, and we could contribute the next game in the series, and yeah, become rich and famous. It's then we're on a second thought, that's probably not that likely because, well, we would work with a publisher. It's their franchise. We wouldn't own it. And also, we wouldn't be the creators of the series. So even fame-wise, it is still the original creators of the game that probably get all the fame here. However, we did see other chances here because the Beholder series, when we looked at it, was very similar to the kind of games that we not only were making, but also are the kind of games that we want to make as a studio that fit our identity as a studio. And I think that's an important part here. So it's a political game. It tells a story about oppression, surveillance, and persecution by the state. It's a game about staying humane in an inhumane regime or an inhumane system. And if I compare this to Through the Darkest of Times, Through the Darkest Times is a political game. It tells a story about oppression, suppression, and persecution by the state. It's a game about staying humane in an inhumane system. And also when we compared, for example, the art styles and the general mood, there seemed to be, it simply seemed to match. And it became clearer for us why Alawar would probably picked us as a studio to work on this franchise. So was it a match made in heaven? Kind of, sort of. While there are certainly chances to work on this, and while this was a game that's clearly was a very well fit for our studios and for what we wanted to make and what games that we wanted to make, there are also certain risks that we had to consider. When we compared it to the game that we made before, Through the Darkest of Times, it was a rather static game. It's not a game in which you walk around. It's a game in which you use menus. It's a game that has mainly images and text. It's a game that doesn't have a lot of animations, for example. A different game that we had worked on at the time called Septembertal did have animations, and you were walking around in the world. However, at this time, we still didn't have anyone in the studio who could make animations. We would need to find the right person in time for these tons of animations that the Beholder games have, and these tons of different characters. So, but this wasn't the only thing that scared us. There were also, the Beholder series had so many things that we had never built before. It had tons of characters. It had 3D environments, potentially 3D characters as well. At least Beholder 2 had that. The NPCs had daily routines and AIs. There were tons of mechanics and systems we would need to build. It was simply a lot. So who should build all of this? We knew that our team could still only partially cover that. So it was when we were basically negotiating whether we would take this project, we would need to be confident enough that at the time that we would start production, we would have hired the people that were able to do the work. While when we were negotiating with people, potential candidates for these positions, we didn't have signed the contract yet, so we would need to kind of rely on, we will get this project, and then we will be able to pay you, and then you will work for us. So it was kind of a juggling around. And we also needed to ask ourselves if we as a team, as the small team that just had shipped this one game, if we would be confident enough to survive the growth, because it was clear that the team would need to grow to make the game, and growing is hard, and growing can actually kill teams. I have seen this more than once in studios where I had worked at. And there was another point, and that was the Beholder games were funny. The series had a sense of very dark humor, and while it also had very dark themes and very depressing themes, it was funny as hell, and it made fun of the oppressors and the system. And our game, Through the Darkest of Times, was a lot of things, but definitely not funny at all. It was super serious. So we were not sure if we would even be capable of making people laugh. Well, and then of course there's the biggest risk of them all, because Beholder is such a famous series. So many people have played it and so many people loved it. They would have extremely high expectations on the next part of the series, and we were the new guy in the room. We were the new studio, and if the game wouldn't meet their expectations, they would make us responsible for it and would blame us for it. So it was a high bar to take. So all of these points were discussed internally, and after weighing risks and chances, obviously you can tell from us, from me being here and having this talk, we decided to do the game. We just had to make a good plan, and we thought it would be worth to take the risks because the chances are just so great. Because the game would fit our identity as a studio so well, and while exploring, while we had to take all these risks, it would also make us as a studio stronger and better in what we do. So yeah, next point was to look at Beholder 1 and 2 and identify for us what are the core points of the game that we would need to look at. So first of all, what are the themes in the Beholder series? They are clearly inspired by classical political dystopian fiction. First of all, Orwell's 1984. I mean, Beholder 1 actually takes place in 1984, and the entire aesthetic look like someone from the 40s, like George Orwell would imagine the 80s. So that's a very strong one. It takes also some influence from Brave New World and from other similar dystopian fictions that describe totalitarian systems. So this theme of being persecuted and being oppressed by the state is a strong one in the Beholder series. It's always there. There is also inspiration from the real world and from movies that then again cover the real world. As we learned from our partners at Alawar, was that the first game was heavily inspired by the GDR and by the movie Life of the Others, that is about a Stasi agent, so the secret police agent of the GDR, who has to surveil his neighbors. And then of course it takes it is heavily inspired by all kinds of totalitarian regimes where there is this great leader that leads his people and takes care of his people, and in return they must follow his orders, not question his decisions, and follow all his rules, no matter how stupid or arbitrary they might look like. And another reoccurring theme is the ministry. It's the all-knowing, all-powerful ministry that is there to make sure that the will of the great leader is applied to and is followed by all citizens of the state. And the ministry again has these agents, the regular people, that make sure that the ministry sees it all and hears it all. There's another reoccurring theme that we found very strong, which is the theme of family. And that represents humanity in the game, we found. Like Karl Stein, of course, during Beholder 1, he always needs to take care of his family. This is his main inspiration. This is why he does all the things. This is why he commits maybe questionable acts from time to time, because he wants to secure and protect his family. In Beholder 2, Evan Redgrave, while the family is not visible, the family is always in the background, and it's still a strong motivational point. So that is something that we wanted to keep. Another reoccurring theme in the Beholder series were the moral choices, making tough decisions, choosing between bad and worse. There's no good choice, but there's only gray areas, and also not being able to foresee certain consequences of your choices, while all choices do have consequences in the storyline, sometimes very drastic ones. And then, of course, there is the dark humor, right? There is the bizarre and the exaggerated sense of humor. That is there is the leader that talks about peace and prosperity while very gruesomely killing his citizens. And all of this combined, all these themes, we decided would need to show up in the third part of the series again. We also took a look at the mechanics. Beholder is an interesting beast game mechanics wise, because it doesn't have this like clear genre where you can say like, okay, this is a shooter, or this is a real-time strategy game, but it actually has overlapping mechanics and quite a few. And also Beholder 1 and Beholder 2 are very different in their mechanics. In both games have some kind of point-and-click adventure elements, like you are talking to a lot of NPCs, you're getting obstacles on the way that you need to solve by, sort of puzzles that come up in dialogues, or by finding items and using them on NPCs or on other objects in the game world, and by that overcoming obstacles, proceeding in the story of the game. The first one had the surveillance as a core element, so you could actually place cameras in the apartments of your neighbors, and you had to watch them. And it had this whole element of reporting them or blackmailing them when knowing something about that, and it was very systems based. It also was real time. Everything was running in real time, and that led often to time pressure when it came to quests, which we felt was a very strong mechanic that connected very well the themes of being under pressure and having to follow hard orders and always being kind of stressed out with the mechanics. The second game brought in some kind of mini games that you could do in the ministry, like the appeal game, where you used the computer and you had to talk to citizens, and then you had to send them to the right place in the ministry, which was a nice tool to learn a lot about the world. It reminded me a lot of Papers, Please, yet we felt that it was a bit too much to revive it for our game again, or to something similar. So then we come to making the game. So what themes should we revive? Well, first of all, of course, it would need to take place in a totalitarian state again. There was a debate whether it should be the same state or the same country than Beholder 1 and Beholder 2. And in the end, we decided against it because we didn't want to produce any discontinuities with the storylines of Beholder 1 and 2, but we had something that was clearly the same universe, that mentions the same states and same countries, but it is kind of its own thing. We called our state the Greatest Union. And of course, oppression, persecution, surveillance would be themes that needed to be visible in the game and inform both game mechanics and the mood and the storylines. And we wanted to bring back the family and make it an important part of the game, so that rather than in the Beholder 2, where the family is not around you all the time, we wanted to have the family be there. This is a very early concept. If you have seen the game, it looks very different now, but this was like the first draft for it. And we wanted the almighty ministry that needed to be there, and we wanted to actually be able to it's not just something in the background, but it's actually something where the game takes place, again, like in Beholder 2. So a theme that we wanted to add, though, and it was new was, well, Beholder 1 took place in 1984, probably as the reference to George Orwell, but also it's an interesting time in real history. The second one took place in 1985. I don't know the exact reasons for this, but I guess it was mainly because it's just a follow-up to the first one. So we said, what if we took our game to 1989? That is an era where in the real world, big changes happened all over the world. And we thought, what if these kind of changes or similar changes would happen to our fictional state of the greatest union as well? What would happen if the great leader and the ministry realized that they would need to change and to adapt to actually stay in power, so that they would start doing reforms, loosening a little bit on the oppression, allow people outrageous things like eating apples or dancing in their apartment, or maybe even laughing out loud, to actually still stay in power, but to seem less oppressive. So there would be, in our world, in Beholder 3, there would be reformers. That was something that we established very early, and basically the government would try to reform and change itself. And we thought, of course, if that would happen in a country like this, in a system like this, there would be people who don't like that within the ministry, right? There would be parts of the secret police and the military that are worried that their power might decrease, and that they lose the control over the people. So they would try to work against this and try to sabotage all kinds of reforms. And then, of course, there would be another faction, and those are the people that don't believe in reforming the country and reforming the city. They believe all of this is not enough. If the same people stay in power, they want a full-blown revolution, so kind of the resistance. And this is how then we had like our three factions: the reformers, we called them the hawks, that are the ones, the authoritarian ones that actually want to stay everything as it is, and the resistance. And then we have Frank Schwarz, our protagonist, a father of two, a husband, and he used to work in a nice office in the ministry. He even had a nice little house in the suburbs. And he was basically, from his point of view, he had a perfect life. But for some reason, he gets dragged into all these events, into these conspiracies that are going on in the state and around him. And while he's really not interested in any of this, and he would like to stay out of all of this, and all he wants is a quiet life, he has to he basically has to take sides. He has to work with the ministry and with different factions within the ministry and even outside the ministry to keep his family secure and to actually even just stay alive and out of prison. So that was the creation of our themes. And on the mechanics side, what we definitely wanted is, we definitely wanted to have the surveilling your neighbors experience back that Beholder 1 made so fantastic. We wanted that you be able to place cameras again, that you actually could collect informations, that you would have to report them to the ministry, and that this would be a core part of the game that you would need to do in order to proceed, basically. We also liked this local neighborhood idea. So we liked the idea of this like apartment building in which you live and in which your family lives, and where you actually spy on your neighbors, and where you have like this little condensed place of drama going on. We also wanted to bring back the time pressure because we felt it fits so well. The theme, and the time critical quests that put you under pressure and basically forced you to sometimes make stupid decisions, or decisions that where you said like that you regret afterwards. And we wanted to bring back the doll's house feeling, kind of, right? Like once you had established cameras, you should be able to get this feeling of like, okay, I can watch, I can surveil my neighbors and look what they do, like in a doll's house. At the same time, what we really liked about the second game was this more personal perspective that the game provided. Where the first game sometimes felt like a strategy game almost, because you were always zoomed out and you were always just observing your neighbors from far. You were not so much into character. So we wanted to get players more into character than they were in the first game. And this basically inspired the dialogue mode, where you actually almost go in like a third-person cam behind Frank's shoulder and are talking to people closely. And you can then also see the apartment buildings and the areas of the game and the environments of the game very close up. And of course, we wanted the ministry back. And we wanted it not just as a theme, as a topic that's somewhere in the background, but we wanted it as something that you could play with, like in the second game, and that also would be part of your visible progress. So so eventually in the game, spoiler alert, Frank becomes the opportunity to work back in the ministry again. However, he has to start in the basement there, and in a shitty office with no windows and nothing. And but he can make his way up to the top, and that also reflects part of the progress of the game. And we also wondered whether it wouldn't be fun if we mixed the surveillance mechanics of the apartment building, so that you could actually put cameras there and surveil your, in this case, your co-workers rather than your neighbors, and bring them in the ministry. And that's what we did. So how did production go? So we had a pretty ambitious schedule of around 15 months from pre-production, from starting to shipping the game, which is, for a game like this, if you haven't done it before, if you need to hire people on the fly, it's really an ambitious schedule. And I'm still amazed that we actually did it on time and in a budget. So production started in November 21, and we went really quickly. We really hurried up to get from concept phase into a phase where we could actually play the game in a very rough form, which helped us a lot iterating on it. And of course, it also helped a lot that we did have Beholder 1 and Beholder 2 to look at, because that saved us some iteration loops that we would have needed to do otherwise. We hired a professional and experienced game writer right from the get-go, and involved her even in the concept phase of the game. Her name is Lena Falkenhagen, and we made her the narrative director of the game. And I can only recommend bringing someone like this on your team if you can, in any chance, because it saved us so much time and made the game so much better, in my opinion. because she helped, or maybe I should say forced us to create a rough quest story framework for the entire game right at the beginning. Something that I personally had always avoided for my games in the past. But even though we had to change a lot, of course, on the floor, on the run, and it didn't stay the same, it still helped a ton to have this framework from the beginning and then later iterate on the framework rather than having to make up something from scratch. It also helped that we didn't try to build everything we needed, every tool internally, but we evaluated, picked, and integrated our tools very soon in the process. In this case, this is RTC Draft, which became our one main place outside of Unity engine for dialogues, quests, NPC schedules, items, and so on. And that helped us a lot for this kind of game. So yeah, the other thing that helped us was that we had an external milestone, which was a demo. It was always clear that we wanted to, because of Corona, we couldn't go and show the game publicly on fairs and conventions and anything. Nothing like this happened, which is something that we usually did to get early player feedback. So what Alawar did, thankfully, is they activated the Beholder community, and we had a milestone where we knew we would need to show an external demo to thousands of players through the Steam demo feature. That happened in October 21. And we gained tons of feedback from there. And also they found lots of bugs, of course, with a very early version. And it helped us a lot to streamline and be more disciplined with the game and its features, because we knew we needed to get it somewhat stable and somewhat out there in October already. So 6 months before shipping. Yeah, then finding the right people helped us, obviously, because we were really lucky and did find the right people. I would say part of that was luck. Part of that was basically what helped us there was that both Sebastian and myself and also Lena are lecturing at different universities. And so we knew a couple of good students who then also knew people again. And then we're also very well connected in the Berlin and German game development scene, you could say. However, it didn't go all like nice and easy. Of course, if you grow so fast, there will be growing pains. There were people that we lost on the way because they weren't happy with our structures and our processes yet, because we didn't have established yet. And yeah, we need to learn. Even though Sebastian and myself have a background in working in big teams, it was still a big change from being the small team where everything is a given to suddenly being this big team. That's how it felt sometimes, where everybody has an opinion, and then you need to structure meetings, you need to structure decision processes where when you're just a small group of people, things just come together kind of magically. What also didn't as well as I hoped it was that in the end we had to do quite a lot of overtime. Gratefully, we never had to go like full-blown crunch. So there was never like I had to go in and said like, no, everybody works 80 hours, something like this. That never happened. And also our publisher never demanded this. But there were some weekends spent to get the game out in time, which I would like to avoid for my next project if possible. And yeah, given that the game came out with more bugs that we hoped it would have, we did a lot of patches since then. We patched the game like 7 times since it came out a month ago. And so that we haven't abandoned it yet. We're going to continue taking care of the game. But yeah, I would have wished we could have caught these bugs earlier, of course. So what did we learn from making this? What is the conclusion here? If there is any, would we do it again? So the question is, as an independent game studio, as a small independent game studio, does it make sense to take over, to to work on a franchise that you do not own with a publisher, and do that rather than doing your own kind of IPs. Well, I would say it depends on your expectations. You will not become rich and famous when you're working on an indie franchise you don't own. But if the game is a match to what your studio wants to do, if it's something where you say like, yes, this is a game I want to work on, this is cool, this matches everything that we stand for, and we think we can make a good game out of this, it can be a great opportunity for your studio to grow while doing so, and actually become a more capable studio. The second learning is I will never do this again without a producer. So hey there, we're still looking for a producer. Please apply. Thank you very much.